Going to start my presentation now. I'll share my screen so we can get going. 1 second. Hopefully you should be seeing what I am seeing. So this webinar, Career and Salary Management webinar now, and in these uncertain times. First, before we start, I am in the middle of a crazy place. No, not a lot of great Wi-Fi, but so excuse any issues we may have. We have, funny Wi-Fi connections, the possibility of noisy children. Sometimes that happens, but I have this feeling that we're going to do a really great job today, and none of these things will happen. Who will benefit from this webinar? I'm really focused on people who are in their careers like 5 to 15 years out. You've been thinking a lot about rebranding and your resume, or you're just thinking, maybe it's a time for a change, and it's been a bit before you took a moment to think about where you are in your career. And of course, as the title suggests, if you want to talk a little bit through about managing your career during this time, how that may be different from other times, even 2 or 3 months ago, you're thinking about things that are so different from before. A little bit about the outline for the webinar. We only have 1 hour, so we're going to have to kind of go through this at a nice clip. There will be a lot of information. I'm going to give you the 4 areas that we're going to talk about, and so pay attention to the ones maybe that fit with where you are and what you will need right now. I will say when I first reached out to Janet, I gave her like a list of 6 or 7 things we could talk about, and her response was yes. So I've tried to put elements of everything in here. Like I said, we're going to go through it quickly. I'll try and elaborate during the parts that I feel you may want to hear more of. Part 1, I want to compare the Great Recession of 2008 to this pandemic, the similarities in terms of possible job losses, but also possible areas of opportunity for us to think through. Part 2 will be the career management piece. As an employee, there's only so much right now you have under your control, and you're probably feeling, possibility of anxiety and a little lost. We'll outline things you can do, and for leaders or managers, maybe things you should also be thinking about in terms of trying to keep calm in your office and wherever you may lead. And definitely the messages, communication. How can we all communicate better during this time so we can all move ahead to get to a place where we feel good. Part 3, organizing your brand. Now this is going to be the nuts and bolts. This is the skills, thinking about transferable skills that you want to bring to the surface now. Resume, I'll teach you how to tidy up your resume. Really think through LinkedIn and how to make it an effective tool for you. It's one of the only tools we have in terms of networking, so we have to figure out how to use it. And just general networking, how to get yourself out there and put yourself in a position that you are seen as an expert during this time. And part 4, kind of the crux of what I work on a daily basis, salary negotiations. And oftentimes, especially in times like this, people may even fear to do salary negotiations, but I'm going to push us to think through that. That's actually just as important as now, even than it was 6 months ago. Okay, let's move forward. And why should you listen to me? Like, who am I? Bear with me this long introduction. You'll see why these pieces matter, and we're going to string some of these thoughts throughout the rest of the presentation. So my name is Cynthia Medina Carson. I am the CEO of Wager. I also have a public policy background. I was a CHCI fellow. I graduated from Georgetown, and CHCI gave me my first good footing, great important footing into the workforce. I did my placement at the World Bank. I was always interested in international affairs. And so from that, I joined the Peace Corps. I was micro lending, right? I was teaching women how to start businesses with $100 loans, and took that into my master's at the Kennedy School of Government, right? Again, international affairs. I saw myself as the next Secretary of State, or Assistant Secretary of State, running around the world, negotiations, but more like, one-to-one in the areas of international affairs. That's what I thought. And then what happened? 9/11. I was in the middle of the first day of my second year of grad school, and I get a phone call from my best friend and love, who became my husband now, but at the time, best friend, calling me on the phone saying, I don't know if you heard, but don't worry, everything's fine. I'm fine, I'm fine. No idea what he's talking about. I walk into the forum, And I see the first building fall and I see the second on the screen. Couldn't find him the whole day. We finally connected. That was September 11th. September 12th, took the first train into Manhattan, 6 a.m. from Boston into Manhattan. Found each other, saw him, saw the tanks, just saw the confusion, just saw how much our world had changed. Went back September 13th and decided to focus, instead of international affairs, my need at the time, everything had shifted and changed. I was best needed to work on terrorism, anti-terrorism, security. Like, what could I do in international affairs that was different and needed now? There was NYPD had a counterterrorism interagency, federal government task force. I joined that. I focused basically on how to find terrorist financing, anti-terrorist financing, how to find terrorists, but using a computer, right? And I did this for many years, and really, felt like I did my service to my country in a different way than I had expected. I went with it. Eventually landed a corporate role at JP Morgan, vice president of JP Morgan. Okay, here I am, post-regulatory stuff, making money. I feel like, okay, I'm landing here and this is where I'm going to be for a while. And I'm ready for this new adventure. Then 2008, what happened? Layoffs. I lost my job. Everything changed. And where I thought I was going to be was nowhere. Like, everything had so shifted and within like a few months. And you'll notice in some of the stories that I talk about with the upcoming information, in this great recession, there was always a possibility of something else. Like, well, we're going to have to shift. It's our jobs that we thought were going to be there are no longer there. What are we going to do? What are we going to do now? So I had an opportunity with my husband, who I was working on a startup, to go to San Francisco, right? And I mentioned this because it was really fascinating for me to be in a place where New York, there was so much kind of tension and sadness, and DC and the policies. San Francisco was like, people were thinking about widgets and gadgets and changing the world, and apps were coming out, and people were really thinking about, it was like a whole different world, right? And they were taking the opportunity to go with the change, but what can we create now that we're here? I wasn't a startup person, but I started working as a startup. I thought about, what do I have to offer this space? Like, what am I good at? What am I doing now with my skills that, and I had the personal skills, I had the people skills. I started working with HR. I started being a recruiter, really building up startups really fast. Ended up getting jobs with multinationals, and then created my own space to have these conversations. I loved everything about that. It was like a high pace, fun, giving people jobs, learning the space. But I have to say, I couldn't help being who I am. And like, my heart is public policy. And I think for me, it was kind of I came full circle on where I should be. One thing I saw, I think I've always wanted an equitable space for my community. I feel like there's a lack of information transparency. And so I definitely would see people across the table from me who I was helping negotiate, or I had a job offer for them. And I just saw how badly people advocated for themselves, didn't know the steps to get to showing me how much your worth was. And definitely for companies, a win for a company is if I could get you for cheaper and less and the more experience, like, it's a win. And I just felt like that was a race to the bottom. How cheaply can we get great talent? In that society, nobody really wins at the end of the day. And so that's why I launched Wager. I really wanted to focus on how to have these transparent conversations, how to make equitable pacts between employees and the workforce, so that there was more wins shared. A little bit about what we do. We work with individuals around salary negotiations. I mean, that's a crux of who we are. I've noticed since during this time, we've had to expand all the stuff that we offer. So we do the salary and career and resume workshops. We work with companies, to talk about how to have these conversations, frank conversations with the different segments of your population, women, people of color, bringing everyone to the table and how to have these conversations. And recently, we've been doing a lot of fun stuff with teaching networks, like business leaders and groups and networks and social groups, how to share amongst themselves. So you don't need me. What can you do amongst yourself to start sharing information and creating tools to kind of organize yourself? So a little bit about that. That was me. Now, you'll see how some of this all maps into what we're going to talk about. So part one, comparing now, 2008 recession to now. So a fast history about what happened in 2008 for some of you who may have experienced it deeply, or some of you was not part of your lexicon. Subprime mortgage collapse, right? A lot of credit freezes. Businesses were forced to reduce spending like they are now. Lots of millions and millions of job loss. There was reduction in need for financial products. People were not paying their auto loans or mortgages or credit card, right? And it just really shrank the whole entire spending and economy, and it led to lower consumer confidence in the economy. And what came from that, though, is a lot of automation of the basic skill jobs. You had a lot of high schoolers who no longer had jobs that was replaced by college-educated people who needed those jobs. And anything routine, especially automation and manufacturing, was replaced with a robot. There was a boom in this time, though, in some jobs. This is when you saw a lot of the computer scientists, computer programmers, the data scientists, and a lot of space for creative roles that weren't there before. It also ushered in the whole idea, the concept, started becoming ingrained in the US workforce, temporary labor, on-call labor, contracted labor, freelancer, right? Before, people were doing freelance for a couple months here and there, but some people, it created a group of people who had to do this as a full-time way to enter the workforce. All right, and again, I mentioned San Francisco before because I want to think about, as we move forward, how to think about this time and space in, I won't say in a completely positive way, but what could be different than was before. And for a lot of people, there was a boom in, like I said, a lot of the infrastructure and development tools that we saw. This is when Slack and Square and Dropbox and Legals and all the stuff came out. And you had people creating a whole business in a day, right? Morning webinar. I mean, you created, your website in the morning, and then, you did your legal documents, and you had Slack, and you basically could create a platform for you to work. And this was a time when people created the high side hustles, became their main hustles. So you had Shopify and Etsy and all these, and Instagram, right? People creating their own place in the world without having to have these kind of bigger infrastructures to dictate how they could be part of the workforce. Two big things I just want to go as we move on to the next section, which is now. Unemployment at the time only jumped up, well, not only, it went from 5 to 10%. And the most impacted individuals were the Black and Hispanic workers, young workers, less educated workers, more so than the rest of the market. There's going to be some parallels to that when we move forward, depending on how we are impacted by COVID. And so just a snapshot of where we are now. April, close to 15%. I think that's probably now in May getting higher to 20% unemployment. We know all the ones that are affected, right? It's a lot of the leisure and activity. No one's flying, no one's eating. Again, retail is affected, manufacturing is going to be affected. We will have to just watch what happens and how this affects individuals in your own industries. There's always people who do well, right? If you know how to do with numbers, if you know accountants and financial advisors and economists, usually those groups will always have jobs. Utility, people who work in all telecoms will have jobs. People who fix and people who sell in bulk and people who fix stuff will always have jobs. And again, though, what I'm seeing and reading and talking to people who are getting job offers, it'll be companies who are the ones who are moving on forward and kind of taking advantage of where we are. Anyone who's in the cloud, anyone who's tech-based, who could do their job from home using Zoom and Slack, a lot of those jobs will be okay. I've actually enjoyed one piece of this, which is watching a lot of my creatives and visual people and audio people actually have a large say in what happens and how they get information out there right now. So a lot of podcasts and content creatives finding their niche in this time. Now, and government, what we're also seeing was interesting is the fact that there's a lot of government opportunity to be seen as a really important part of this process. When was the last time people knew the names of their governor? This is just like definitely unprecedented that we know the names of agencies, the names of governors. There's going to be a lot of reduction in spending as before. A lot of reduction in spending ends up being a lower tax base. There'll be a lot more people asking for a lot less, a lot more people needing services with less money and less budget. So in this time, as we move on to the second section, really thinking about the leadership and what you have to offer. How are we going to think big? How are we going to do more with less? Okay, that was part one, the little depressing part. Now we're going to start moving into the nuts of the conversation. The career management during uncertainty. Okay, for the employee, there's going to be so many things that are not going to be under your control. And I think that brings a lot of anxiety to the table. There are going to be layoffs, right? If you run a nonprofit, if your job is based on a grant, you will be vulnerable. all these event cancellations, client cancellations. I mean, so many of our friends, and on this call, 70% of their clients, if you run your own business, you know, you've lost them. Everyone's scrambling. The other piece that you cannot control, when and if we return to normal, right? If you're trying to map the date, well, it'll be January or it'll be November, and we really have to just put that aside. We're gonna talk through what you can do now versus what you can't do. This is what you can do. You can focus on what you can control. And as a person, if you feel you're vulnerable in an industry that's vulnerable, a position that may be vulnerable, got to start really thinking about, take a time today to think about, what are your skills? Like, what is it you want to show the world now? In the way that I had to think about that in 2008, and the way I had to think about that after 9/11. What are the skills that matter most now that you can bring to the world as an expert, right? And so you start thinking about transferable skills, right? Like, if you write all day, who could you write for? If you have a lot of tech resources, where should you shift your information? You do research, you do numbers, you know, well, how am I going to bubble? Like, I put those four words seem very generic, right? Numbers and writing and research. But that type of skill set, if you're good at it and you can really kind of, you know, package it well, it is going to be needed now and moving forward. Okay, if you've been in a job for a while, you haven't really thought about your skill set, take 2 or 3 that you want to elevate and make sure that you're at the top of your game. There's so much free online resources right now, like Harvard and all these, you have all these groups, MIT, Coursera, and General Assembly. Some are free, some are paid. It is a good time to think about, okay, do I have the right words that people call the stuff that I do now? You know, am I in a place where I know the lexicon, I know where the industry is going, you know, and I'm sharp with the skills that I have to offer? Definitely do not educate yourself. There's going to be a large amount of platforms coming to the workforce. It's not just going to be Zoom and Slack. It's going to be a lot more things. Stay up to date and just know and try and be mindful that just keep a little education piece time of your week. Like, find that half hour, find that hour, just to make sure you're seeing what's coming and you're seeing what's applicable to your workspace. Now, because things have changed so much, maybe 6 months ago, you guys had this amazing, great plan for the year and all the great things you were going to do. It's changed. You're going to be focusing now on the new, where are we going now in our office? Am I ready for whatever we need to do next? Do I have the skills? And what am I going to be measured against in terms of successful KPIs, right? So key performance indicators, whatever they were before. If my goal was to increase, say, our grant funding by 50,000 in this space, that is no longer the case. So now what am I supposed to do? So have a great conversation, ongoing conversation with your supervisors and management of, tell me where I need to be and tell me how you're going to measure that I was successful at that. And the key for you is communicate. I can't tell you how one simple or two simple conversations or an email or two really just clears the air of any confusion. And I think there's just going to be so much things are changing so fast. People are working so hard, and you're not seeing people. So just communicate as effectively as you can, whether they're on Zoom, whether on phone call, or they're on email. As always, you'll need to be the master of your own roadmap. We've always been the master of our own roadmap. It's just a little reminder that we need to continue that in our career path. If you're a manager or leader, for you, and I know you've had to do this, just stop and assess. Are we doing all that we're supposed to be doing now? This may be a long time. You might be in a situation where all your team is dispersed around the nation, or different offices, different home offices. What is going to be the new normal? And this might be the normal for a while. Whatever we did before, is there value to what we did before? What do we have to change, and what can stay the same? We're going to outline our priorities. We're going to make sure that our process to get those done, we actually have the tools to get those done. If we have to shift to our focus over here, do we have the processes in place to make sure that we can do that? And communicate. I can't tell you, if you're going to make changes in the office, convey those action steps clearly convey new KPIs. Anyway, we're going to go over here instead of over this way. Teach and talk about what the expectations are for those changes. Now, I want to leave, we're going to end this section soon. And I want to end it with you thinking about there's opportunities here for change, for us to do things differently than we didn't do before. Maybe there was all these, you know, institutional roadblocks, and maybe there was these models that just didn't fit anymore. You didn't like. You have an opportunity to make true and systemic change. You know, so just don't take this time as, all right, let's hurry up and get back to what it was before. If a great leader will take this opportunity to be like, all right, what can I do now? Be the leader your group needs now. And before we move off, I definitely want to, so nonprofit sector, Janet mentioned like there are a lot of people on the call who are going to be from the nonprofit sector, who may manage your own organizations. You will be vulnerable, you know that, to if you rely on grants, you are going to be extra vulnerable. I would say for this group to stay on top of your donors, watch their shifting priorities, right? There's going to be less donors, less money, less grants, tighter maybe restrictions. That's the hard part, you know, the kind of like the worrisome part. But there's the other part. Maybe there's parts of your organization that you've wanted to focus on, and now with this pandemic and there are opportunities for you to shift funds or shift resources and really take something on that you feel like actually have a competitive advantage to do that. So pay attention as you change and as you shift. Document all of your changes, all of your work. It's going to be important later, so show what you've been doing during this time with less money or less resources, and still being able to impact change. Publicize any of your successes, small or big, or just show the road to getting out. You know, if you're showing people the road of how hard you're working, what you're doing, how you're trying to do it differently and adapt, that's going to be big pluses for you next year. And again, for you, communicate, get creative, extra creative, and stay visible. Okay, a little story before we move on to the fun or the pencil and paper section. I am on the board of a nonprofit. It's my hometown where I grew up, Holyoke, Massachusetts. It was a nonprofit. It was just like a girls club, Girls Inc., who was doing so well that they took over a smaller region of the girls clubs and expanded to Chicopee and Springfield and Holyoke, right? So it's this little tri-state group that's doing really well to serve the needs of underserved girls in terms of educational opportunities, post high school opportunities, and just, you know, keep them keep them going in situations where we often lose these girls, these vulnerable populations. So this group has teen centers, right? And they have after school program. All their programming is hands-on, like, you know, in their face, in girls' homes, taking them on trips, and all this stopped. I mean, we were doing such a great job. We were doing this capital campaign to raise money to, you know, replace this old building, and all that came to a stop. So what they did, what I thought was very impressive, they stopped everything and they made a phone call to every single girl that participates on their program. They called all those cities around all the program, and they called the teachers. What do you need now? Where are you? Are you okay? Are you safe? You know, what are your basic needs over the next few days? What can we help you with? But during that survey, they also thought, okay, what will they need? You know, some girls were just lonely, right? So they knew that they had to start creating kind of online content and just like general communication with them online, like they make sure they had laptops, make sure there was some Wi-Fi available somewhere. They had to get in and be part of their daily routine like they were before. So they partnered with local schools. They created the programming. You know, a lot of these schools they're not well managed. Some are in receivership. So how can they partner with the schools to keep their educational, you know, exploits going, but at the same time kind of be that like big adult in the room when others may not be there? So they created virtual classes. They partner with nearby schools, universities, UMass and others, Bay Path University. Okay, but this is going to be the big part I want to walk away with. I want you to have. They run a program called Eureka, which is a 5-year STEM-based program that takes a girl in 8th grade, gives them the basics in science and engineering through 9th and 10th. Then they have some externships, and eventually the idea is they apply to schools and they have a little basis in terms of the STEM. Big deal, and we've been working with them to create infrastructure for that program. One thing that happens though is they tend to lose girls. You know, we start off with 30 girls at 8th grade, and by the time it's, you know, senior year, you're down to 15. And the 15 they do have, wonderful and great, but they tend to be middle-class girls who have an ability to manage the logistics. Parents have cars, or parents have ability to trade off. Maybe there's one parent home, the other one works. They can get the girls to the internships. They can get them to participate in all this wonderful stuff. We lose the poorest. We lose the most vulnerable who need this opportunity the most. And something that I said at board meeting, which was really important to highlight as if people are doing this hard work. They're not probably taking a step back. We lost these girls because of transportation. We are now at a point where COVID and the pandemic has created a humongous opportunity because we are all, it's an equalizing force. Everyone's sitting, I'm sitting, everyone who used to travel and run around on airplanes, everyone's sitting. These girls, we are going to go back, reclaim those girls and have them participate in this program because they're going to just need a computer and ideally some Wi-Fi or internet capability, which we're working on, and get them back in the program. They can end, if it's successful, why should we ever go back? Here and there, of course, but in general, this program can just go online and we can work with the professors. So this is an opportunity, I guess, before we move on, to start thinking, if you're out there, if you're a leader, if you're thinking, having like, we can take advantage of this time to make a bigger impact and not just go back to what it was like, but are there opportunities for us to do better? Okay. All right. This is the pen to paper. A lot of this takes days. All right. I'm going to kind of go through this as not quickly, briskly, and focused as possible. I have a few examples of people I've been working with, and I'll use them. I do not use their real names. These are real people. Anyone I mention are real people. All right, so organizing yourself. This is a time of uncertainty. Ideally, we all have our jobs. Some of us will lose jobs, or some of us will be transferred into different places and maybe we're not comfortable in, and eventually might be ushered into a new industry. So I'm going to talk about a person who is going through this, and I'm working with her now, Michelle. And Michelle is fantastic. She actually is a principal at a platform organization, I'll say. She's a really smart woman. She's like an engineer-focused woman. She's just, I started talking to her. She told me the reason they hired her at this kind of like techie place is because they need an adult in a room. They have this big, let's say Microsoft-y big group of people, customer, and she does customer success. So they brought her in to manage this big customer that they did not, all these young people had no idea how to manage this big organization. She worked with them. She worked and she became the in-between to kind of bring together the tech part, the crisis part, the customer part. Like, how do we bridge this and how do we start working together, right? That's her. Awesome. But she's not happy. And she's like, I don't want to do this forever. And I don't want to be here anymore. And I don't know what to do next, right? So if some of you are thinking right now, what am I going to do next? How do I even start thinking about what to do next? I've always done this thing over here. I asked her a simple question. I said, all right, out of all the jobs you've ever had, which one did you feel like you were swimming in, where like it was meant for you and you felt like this is what I want to do all the time? And out of all the things she mentioned, which is, her resume is about really customer success management, big companies and managing, like biz dev, a little bit biz dev. She said chief of staff. One time I was a chief of staff and I was a problem solver, like crisis, like the CEO would say, hey, there's a problem over here, go fix it, let me know how it goes. And she'd be like, I have no idea what that is, the topic, the space over here. And the person would say, but I trust you, you'll figure it out. And she did. And that was, she felt like she grew 10 inches by doing the job where they said, here, go fix this engineering-based customer. She would go fix it. I was like, wow, that's amazing. Like, why in this resume, nothing you're saying is actually in here. I don't see this here. This is what I see. I could set you up with these, companies and it's biz dev, but like, I feel like you're this huge problem solver. You're an engineer focused, engineering language. I didn't even know you were an engineer. She goes, I actually am an engineer. I'm like, but in your resume, I don't see it again. I don't see what you're telling me. And she said, well, I went through a divorce. And that knocked me down. It really took me off my financial path. I was lost. I had to take jobs that I knew could make money. And I just got off who I used to be and where I thought I was going. And so I've this resume, I actually don't like it. It looks amazing to people, but it just doesn't speak to who I want to be. I was like, all right, God, this is what we need to get at. What do you want to be? And I think I hammered in with her is like, you have phenomenal skills for about what's about to happen. You have crisis management. You have a customer, like figuring out how to cut cost cutting, budgets. Like, you're really well set up. We need to bring that to the surface and you can get your next job. Just a little sip of water. Okay, so let's bring those to the surface, and that's what you need to do. I need you, at the end of the day, all of you. I can't find you as a recruiter, and no, you can't be found if you're not telling me who you are. So what you need to do is help me, if I'm an employer and I have the job you want, help me find you. So the next part is going to be about making your skills shine and helping people find you, whether online and networking, however, have that resume, have it all set up so I can know who you are and your skill set. All right, tip 1, there's gonna be 4 tips here, and then we're gonna talk about salary, and then we're gonna do question and answers. So tip 1 of this second part 3, transferable skills and what that means. All right, you are going to be competing. There are some of you, maybe not. Some of you maybe have the best jobs in the universe and it's only gonna get better. Great. For others, you may be competing for a smaller pool of jobs. And this is why you need to focus on the 2 or 3 skills that you want to sell out to the universe. Why? Sometimes I see a resume and it's like, I can do anything. And that is not going to be helpful, because I'm going to see a resume that says, I need a person who knows how to use black and red markers. And you're like, I know how to do black, red. I know how to do circle. I was like, no, I just need to know that you know how to do black and red markers, you know? And it has to be that clear. And so focus on what are the 2 or 3 main things that you can bring to the table that no one is as good. Look right and left. I'm good at this, and this is what I want to sell. All right, bring those front and center, and match those. Though this is the key. There's going to be you got to match those to what the jobs will be out there, right? Which is why I kind of did the fundamentals. You know how to write. You know how to do numbers. Like there is going to be a whole, like in the way that in 2008 there was a huge, 9/11 after 2001, a whole sector of anti-terror, like it became multi-billion-dollar space. There's going to be a huge space too in this. Every time we start over, something else comes from it. So you have to pay attention to what the needs are. Okay, if you're in tech, you're fine. You know, you're going to be fine. If you know cyber, you know, cloud engineering, you'll be fine. Again, let's talk about those general skills. Some of you out there might have more general skills, like if you know regulation and legal work and writing and content. If you know how to fundraise, people are going to need you. Marketing. I have a person, she does crisis management. She's working 16-hour days because there's so much crises with her clients. All right, so there are some companies and some skill sets are going to be much in demand. So highlight that skill, those skills for you that you're good at. You know, start thinking about those. Make sure they're honed. We're going to talk about, you know, you want to talk about making sure they're up to date. Bring those up to the surface. And because you need this for your resume. Often people say, oh, you know, I'm good, I got a resume. But you have a resume maybe for before, and again, in a tight job market, it's gonna matter even more that you know exactly what you're saying, say it succinctly, say it well. Your resume is not a history lesson about your life. And I know you want it to be because you have so many things you love, and it's blood, sweat, and tears, and I hear you. But you have to tell me where you're going next, not where you were before. You have to help me. You have to, you're gonna have to solve my problem. I have a problem here, right? It's in front of me. Does your resume match my problem? And that's how you get in front of me. Don't be afraid. If you haven't done your resume in a long time, the most fearful, I think the big fear factor for people is starting over. Take a blank, a Word doc, and just start adding things back that matter for the next thing you want to do, right? And just see how short you can get it. Some of it's not going to matter anymore, and especially, and this is a tip that I didn't put in here that I have to remember. It's, if you're going to start putting, you cannot put anything before the 90s, definitely nothing in the 80s. If some of you are on second half of your career, there are ways that there is ageism. And so, something I talk a lot about is, we have to kind of put that in the background and just focus on what problems you can solve for the person, and trim your resume accordingly. So don't be afraid to start from scratch. Take all that junk out and just start over. Take your top skills and make them shine, right? So if you're like, I'm a research, I love a research oceanography or, environment, right? I'm a big research environment. And I have a job for researcher in the environment space. I need you to go through your resume and just say research environment, every bullet point, everything, just hone me in, focus me in that you are going to be the perfect person for me to come interview. Make sure that these buzzwords, as I mentioned, or, one thing you do, and I said, well, let's go back for a second, have a job description next to you, and you have your resume, and do you feel like it matches up? If they need analytics, yep, I got analytics. And if they need this this type of programming, yep, I got that type of programming. Make sure that it is set up for the next problem you want to solve. This is a big fight. People don't, and I'll show you an example in a second. Yes, I've worked with CEOs and I've worked with VPs and SVPs. You can get it to a page. You can. If you do a second page, make sure that second page is so vital. It tells you another part of the story. And people are gonna be like, no, I've been working so much. I'll show you an example of a resume. You can have 2 pages if whatever is on that second page matters to me and kind of give me a better insight into who you are and how you're gonna help me. Ideally, you should do 1 page. All right, back, and I'm gonna keep saying employers needs employer. This is not about you and how amazing and shining you are. It is about amazing and shining you are for the problem that I have and for the job that I have that I need you to do. It's gonna be hard, especially if you're in DC area, but avoid industry, right? You wanna make your transferable skills shine, and not that you are a person that can only do such niche work. So take a step back, maybe take out the jargon. Sometimes I read a resume, and I have no idea what they did because it's so jargon laced that it's hard for me to, I can't pass that resume on. It's really hard for me to know how they match with where the industry is going. In a simple, quick fix in your resume, tell me, tell me your title. Like I am, director of operations or, director of programming. Then tell me where you worked, and then, the dates and stuff. Why? As a recruiter, the average recruiter looks at a resume for 6 seconds. I mean, that's 6 seconds. Me, I think it's like 3 or 4 seconds. I do your name, I do like title, and I do a little bit. I'm like, okay, I can see if this, and then I make a decision if I should start looking at it a little more in depth. But I do quick no. So make sure I know that you can do the job I need. Put the title. Let me see your title, and the bullets underneath. Again, just make sure that they matter to me and what I need you to do. All right, so this is an example. I had a person that I was working with. She was transitioning from working in DC policy, but quant. She's a quant person. She does surveys and quant analysis. She wanted to shift it to New York, to the private sector, and doing quant and qualitative work and survey work and research work, but for, say, a startup or, in a tech space. So it took her a lot of, there's a lot of upskilling to go from doing projects for the State Department to shifting to trying and, applying to Instagram. Now, that's a big shift, but she really took it on. She gave me this resume. I was like, first of all, it was 4 pages. I was like, I'm not even gonna look at it until you get it down to 2 or 3. She's like, oh, but it has to be 3. I was like, no. We eventually did move it to just 1 page, and this is what it looks like. I needed her to tell me, you want to do research and insights? Just tell me you do research and insights, and go through your resume and show me that you're program manager, research and insights, right? I need to know that that's what you do. I can see your resume. I can move it forward to other people. We are going to be, I know Lindsay put it in here. I get a lot of resume questions, which is really fascinating. I never thought that was something that people would need help on. I'm so happy to be able to say that we have a bunch of free webinars. We can send it here. Maybe Lindsay later on can put it on the chat if you guys want to sign up for that. All right, so a couple tips. Now, tip number 3, the reason I talked about transferable skills and the reason I talked about really honing your resume is because I need you to get kind of in the mindset of being found for your skills. Right now, we don't have opportunities to network. You have to create it, or you got to get on the LinkedIn. There's only 2 or 3 places we are networking right now. That's it. We're like in Zoom and we're in LinkedIn. There's not that many. So take advantage of the fact that that's where everyone is. And so do what you have to do to be seen on LinkedIn. Those keywords I'm talking about, those skills, that job description that you want to be part of, those words need to be plastered on your LinkedIn. Keep it simple, right? Director research, a manager of accounting, whatever it is. If you want me, I have a job description. I have a great job, and looking for you. The way I find people is a recruiter has a recruiter account. They put 4 or 5 keywords, and the people come up. And that is it. And that's not. There's no magic. I mean, there's more to that. There's nuances. There's location, and there's sometimes there's a lot in between. And a good person can see the in between. But the first batch of 100 people that come up, help me find you, right? So keywords, make sure you know your skills, put those skills, put the level, and put the type of work that you can do. Good picture, we all know, please take a good picture, that's a basic. A few of these, people say participate, because LinkedIn is the only place we are participating in right now in terms of networking, and we're only Zooming, there's only certain places. Your big opportunity here, and we'll talk about it on the next slide when it talks about networking, your big opportunity is to start being seen for the expert you are on the skills that we keep talking about. This is why you create the content. This is why you do your blog pieces, and then why you post these presentations and videos. Some people may put a lot of stuff. I'm gonna say, don't put a lot of stuff, focus it. I wanna be known as a great fundraiser for nonprofits in the women in health space. That is really specific, and that is great. The more specific, the easier. You have to get a little, broader, dash broader, but that's health, women, fundraising, great. You're gonna create content about doing that in this, post-recession spot. You wanna make a simple video about those. You wanna basically become known for that thing that you wanna become known for. Do it by participating online. There's a part, and this is, people kind of forget about this. When you first were doing LinkedIn, you like, oh, these are all the skills that I can do, and you pick like 20 of them. And, you kind of forgot about that. Know that as a recruiter, I sometimes look for the skill set that people do, because sometimes there's so many people. Focus those skills on the 5, no more than 10, ideally like 5 to 7. These are the skill sets that you want me to find you. And that's, there's an algorithm to that. Hone in on those, delete the old ones, put in the new ones that you want people to see you for this. And maybe it's changed. It's been 10 years, like, oh my God, I can't believe I had those skills. That is not even the thing I focus on anymore. Be active, like I said, follow companies, forward content of companies that you like, talk about why that matters to you, engage with companies in that way, in simple ways. And the key, and we're going to talk about this next, is you want to stand out as a subject matter expert in what you care about, so I can see you, people can see you, you'll be known for something. When a job comes up, you're at the top of people's list. All right, and so we're gonna close out this in a second about networking differently. We are networking differently. We have to keep networking. Networking is actually even more important now than it was a few months ago. There's only a few mechanisms for us to get out and talk to people and meet people. Sharing is caring, right? But sharing is also good for your brand. Curate, and and friends of ours, that some of you online, even on this on this webinar, know a few people who are really good at just curating information and keeping people informed. Right, so be a person that, like, I don't have time to write contents and blogs, but I can collect information and I can send it out to a group. Think of something that is how you feel comfortable doing it. Don't try and do it like other people, because I hate posting sometimes. I know I have to, so I try to do it in the way that feels most comfortable to me and gets my point across. One thing I feel the best goodwill you could do right now, help you and help others, is you have a skill, share it. Share it for free. Do a webinar. I did a webinar last month, and I didn't know how it would resonate, and it was a resume webinar. And I was like, okay, this is great. I'll do this because I know it's something I can do, and I know a lot of people are going to be looking for jobs. It became a huge thing, and people have resonated. I think people just needed to know that they were going to be okay. And it was very simple. There's some of you out there who know how to teach people how to get online, or teach people how to do the basic content, or you could edit for people. Think about what you can do and put a webinar, or put some, crowdcast together where you can, hey, listen, I'm just going to show you this. I want to show you some skill sets, and I want to share it with you, and I hope it helps. Right, and so some of you are going to create Zooms. You're going to have to do it whether you like it or not. Also do it on stuff that you want to be seen for. Teach people how to fundraise online. And it can be fun. I feel like there's so much seriousness. I did something that's so out of character. There was a DJ, and he was doing it was a Prince versus Michael Jackson night, and it was DJ Spinna, and he was going 4 hours, and I was like, yeah. And so I participated, and I listened, and he asked for a donation. I was like, yes, I'm donating to you. Like, the fact that I was on Twitch listening to a DJ on a Friday night with family, that would never in the world have happened had this not, that is just not in the realm of anything. But that was a beautiful, wonderful moment. I will always remember that. If that man needs anything, I will donate to a cause. It would just change, taking opportunities of being where we are now and being a leader where we are now and looking for opportunities to be creative the way we are now. All right, so again, follow the organizations, follow the companies. You're still gonna have to do this stuff. Share their content, talk about their content and why it matters to you. Just keep networking and get out there. If you hate it as much as I do in terms of posting and social media and being out there, make a simple schedule, right? I put a post or something on Tuesday, one Instagram on Wednesday, and something on Friday. And that's all. And just say, that's all I can do. That's, it's too much going on right now. But you have to do it. You got to stay engaged, and you got to show your leadership skills and those skills that you want magnified for the next job. All this to say, be seen as an expert or trusted source, and that is your goal. Last and not least, let me take a quick check of the phone. Okay, great. We're doing pretty good. And I say last and not least, because this is going to be one of the most important things that I want you to, another takeaway I want you to, kind of stay with you, not just now, but ongoing. Okay. I started Wager because I felt, okay, before I do that depressing slide, I started Wager because I felt like there's a lot of us have lack of information, lack of access to basic salary negotiation skills. Just lack of understanding of what our worth is in the marketplace. And that's kind of how I started. I just saw too much of how we can set ourselves back. I put this slide yesterday and I shared it with the fellows. We had a workshop yesterday with the fellows. We have to be honest about what might happen to them. Recession graduates tend to make less than non-recession graduates, right? There's a lot of people chasing a smaller amount of jobs, salary suppression, and there's a possibility that they may not catch up. Their salaries may not catch up to where their other cohorts who didn't go through a recession for 10 to 20 years if you're not paying attention. And if you're allowing, kind of salary to come at you as if it's something that you can't control. And the takeaway is that there's a possibility they can make 60 to 100,000 less in the lifetime of earnings because of this time, because of literally this time that we're going to go through over the next couple of years. So that is a truth. And this is my fear as a person who's been working hard to get people confident to figure out their worth, demand their worth, go up the corporate ladder and take on those big positions and be seen and heard. I do have a fear that we're going to get to a point where we're going to say, you know what, I'm just happy to have a job. There's a lot of people, people I know, people lost jobs, but I feel like we've been here before. A lot of Latinas, we've been here before. We are here. We're often just happy to have a job, and that's just not good enough. We have our skill set's bigger, our network is bigger, our college degrees, we have more understanding. Let's just hold a second and just don't take the job as is. And, I feel like we worked so hard to get where we are. I can do this. I got to a place where I grew up, two parents who dropped out of high school, and I am in a place where I can, run my own business. So a lot of us have gotten far. I'm fearful that we're going to start negotiating out of fear and out of a vulnerable place. And why is this important? It's because people of color already, and they make less than our counterparts. Latinas make less. 50. We talk about this every 2 or 3 times a year at the golden moments. We have this statistic come up. And over a lifetime, because we make less on the dollar, 50% less dollar to their white male counterparts, there's a possibility less, 600,000 to 1 million over a lifetime of a career, right? These are just the things that happen now. We're not even talking about COVID, and we're not talking recession. We must always negotiate, or we will always make less than our counterparts. And that is the truth. We will always make less if we do not negotiate. We just always will. And I'm going to talk to you now of my basic 101 salary in a slide. And we're going to try and go through it. I'll do them the best I can for the fact that we have 5 more minutes left. Your goal is to negotiate the market worth of a job. It's not yourself. It's not your self-worth. What is the market worth of this job? And that is what you want to go after. And then some, because you're super duper awesome at that job. So you're going to be worth a little more than the market. And that is your goal. All right, my quick salary 101. The offer stage is the best time to negotiate. And I do not, if you're standing there with a job offer, you have no idea the power you have. I just spent months talking to people, 250 resumes. So there's in when I had to do the longer workshop, I have a thing. I put up a picture, a graph. It's about average amount of resumes that say about 250 resumes come in for a job, for average corporate job. Of those, only 4 to 6 people are put in front of a management position, in front of managers and hiring individuals. And then only 1 person gets the job. And actually, out of the 4 to 6 that actually get in, to have a conversation, I bet you 2 are internal and maybe 1's their friend. So you really, 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 it took usually it's a long road for you to get that offer. Do you think I want to do this again? I just took so much resources of the company and the nonprofit. There's not a group out there that doesn't, like, this isn't a hard thing to do, and it's a resource draining thing to do. It's expensive, it's tedious, it's demoralizing. I say all that so you truly understand, if you ask for something, I'm probably going to give it to you. Off the bat, by asking off the bat, people tend to make anywhere from 2 to 10 just by asking for more. I see it over and over I see it like I saw it 3 times this week. Just asking, you got a little. And I promise you, if someone offers you something, it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon and you're like, oh my God, this is great, just hold off. And I'm going to repeat that later on. No one's going to take your job away by sitting and pausing for a second to take a look at that overnight. So what does it look like? Because part of this anxiety around salary negotiations is like, I don't even know what to ask for. I am just happy to get a job, but I don't know. You talk about knowing worth and knowing what to ask for. I don't know. How do I do that? This is a really long process that we can go into. I'm going to try and give it in snippets. Of course, you do your research, right? Of course, you do your online research. Use PayScale. Use Salary.com. Use LinkedIn. You do all this stuff. And people are like, yeah, but that's not apples to apples. Totally fine. What you're trying to do is just set up a framework so you definitely don't want to go so under. You want to, out of all the numbers I see, everything stays around somewhere between 70, 85, 78K and 85. Like, that's basically what I'm seeing no matter what. I put in, so I think PayScale tends to be HR, more numbers that come from companies, so people like to use it more. You put your location, you put the generic title that you feel like other titles, you kind of see what comes up and you're getting the average. That's one. You need to start getting bolder and start sharing and talking. What this can look like, right? If you have a great network and you've been a person who's been there for other people and you want to get a sense, is this in the right range? I'm about to get an offer. Where do I start? This is what I'm getting online. Hey, you tend to do the job I do. You are, executive at a nonprofit. We're kind of in the same space. I'm not asking you to tell me how much you make, but I'm getting a job offer in this range. Does that seem right to you? I've got offer from 95K with benefits. Is that right? For the size, or have you heard, in your network, the person, and I will tell you 75% of the time, the person's like, yes, that is, or they may even just tell you what they make. I know that is a taboo. I know people feel uncomfortable. I know that, no, and there's another, I have another graph. The people that feel uncomfortable are it is an older generation. The younger that you are, if you're a digital native, you've always had an iPhone, you've always been in front of people. People know what you eat, what you drink. People know what you wear in the morning, what you wear at night. Salary is not a thing. Like, salary is a piece of data that someone put on this job. You took it. You get a different data. You get another job. It's a different data. Like, it's not about them. It's not their identity, their worth. And I know that's something that I would like you to start thinking about. How do you just detach this number that someone put down on a piece of paper, someone collected and did machinations, did Google and LinkedIn and found this, and this is what they're going to pay you. You're like, okay, it is not your worth. It is just a number that someone gave you. So you want to research, you want to talk, and you want to share amongst your network and create hey, this is where I think I'm at. Is this right? Now you have a framework. You're like, okay, I really feel like I'm at the upper level. It goes from, what I've noticed, it's from 75 to 90, but I have an expertise. I've done it for a few years, and I actually have some really good salient points. I'm going to go aim for the 90, upper 90. And again, don't say yes. They give you an offer. You're going to be so excited. Just hold, pause. Great. I'm going to look this over. I'm going to speak to my partner. I'll get back to you in a day or 48 hours. Just take a pause. No one's going to rip. I just told you that it took forever for you to get the resources to get you to the position to offer you was a lot, and I'm not going to pull it in a night. Okay, so don't say yes. Or it's because you want to go back, and you want to pause, and you want to organize your thoughts and make sure it's in line, and you have a response. Now you've done all this research, you've researched, you shared amongst, you've talking, you've done all this. You're like, okay, they gave me an offer 82.5. I really feel like it's in the 90K range. Because I actually have this crazy expertise that they're going to really need. From my interviews, I found out that, you know, there's declining enrollment. I'm going for a registrar position. There's declining enrollment. I found out there's, they haven't, you know, not having done good enough work in D&I, you know, all these things I'm really good at and they're going to need me. So now you say, this is great. I really appreciate it. But from my research, you know, what I found is it really I'm more in the 90 range. You know, what can you do? How can you help? You know, I would love to, I feel like we're going to be a good fit. Is there flexibility? How can you help me get closer to where I feel like I should be? So how about the employer says, you know what? Well, the market's changed. Yeah, that might have been last year, but now, you know, things are not the same. You know, we're going to probably, okay, we'll give you 85. That's really where we want, that's as much kind of what we can do right now. And what you're going to say, and this is why you take the pause, just assume they're going to say no. And you want to outline the 3 or 4 ways that you're going to kick butt in that position, that no one is like you, and how amazing you're going to be. If they take you, you have this problem. Remember, I have a problem and I need it fixed. You're like, I'm going to give you the expertise in 4 different ways. I will solve that problem in 6 months. I can solve that in a year. You want to pay me this level because, like, I feel like I can make this strategic problem go away. So this is what you want to do. And this is why I tell people, like, listen, you want to just be awkward. 10 minutes of awkwardness has a potential to give you 10K in money. So just let it be awkward for 10 minutes. You try once, you're like, from my research. You try twice, right, but these are my counterpoints. And they're like, and then maybe they budge, they go back, they come back with a number, and is it close? And you make a decision based on, you know, your budget and where you are. And that's it. 1, 2, 3, make a decision. The key to this, though, is practice. If you get in front of that person, I know I've seen people who don't go in and they're not practiced and not ready and don't have their counterpoints. They're like, okay, you know, and they're just, okay, fine. You know, they don't like the awkwardness. I actually just did this yesterday. And the reason I brought the registrar example up is I just a person, she's a registrar for a well-known university out in the West Coast. I say West Coast because I'm going to scramble because I don't need you to know this person. She's a real person. And, you know, they're coming into and she did her homework, and for what she does and her location where she is, tends to be in the 80K range. But she already makes 80K. And what she found through her conversations is she's about to deal with 10 times the population of where she is. She's about to deal with a much more, also it's a community college, so it's not private sector. It doesn't have the same facilities. They have a declining enrollment, and there's an endowment. There's all these strategic issues that she's going to have to come in to think about. And she's like, okay, I hear you. And I made her practice because she was like, I could tell, you know, she was shaky about it. I was like, all right, practice again. I'm on this, and I'm going to say, hey, nope, that's all we got. What are you going to tell me? She practiced. And I was like, own it. What you're about to bring to them, actually, they really need your strategic advice and help. Like you're bringing something really important. If you shine, the board of directors, everyone's going to be so happy, and you've done a service to your community. So you're just stick with it. You know, don't be scared. Practice with me. So she did it, and she showed me, she sent me a great email, and she said, okay, I was shaky at first, but then I slowed down, and I had my points, and the person, she had come at 82.5. She actually just off the bat said, okay, 85, because I asked, so you were right. And then she said, well, you know, I'm really looking at, you know, in the closest, you know, I'm looking more in the 90K range. This is what I'm going to do, and this is what I'm going to do. These are the things I'm going to do that I'm going to bring to you. What can, you know, is there flexibility? Who can we speak with to see, you know, if this, you know, what we can do to get closer to that? And the woman said, okay, I'm going to go and see what we can do. Like, and that was it. And so if she comes back, she's going to make a few more by just asking in 10 minutes of awkwardness. This is something that a lot of entry-level people make a mistake. They're just like, okay, sure, whatever. And they don't realize after taxes, if you're in New York, you have state tax, you have city tax, you have breathing tax. And I said breathing, like there's so many taxes, but if you think that 60K, you end up being like 30K, right? Have a minimum. You have bills, and there's a lot going to happen to you. There's a lot of uncertainty. You're going to have to try and have a minimum, stick to that minimum. In the same way, as I stick to these phrases, stick to your guns. try and stick to your minimum. I know these are, again, times of uncertainty. You may set yourself back for the long haul if you start taking things that are less your time, I mean, that don't pay your worth. You also will become resentful. Within the year, you're going to find something else. You're going to see that this work is like 3 times what they said it was going to be. It's not what it was, and I'm going to get resentful, and you're going to be in the same place looking for a job again. So just try, is what I'm saying, try. And what I want you to walk away is be flexible, but don't be foolish. We've made so much strides to get where we are now. Don't throw it all away out of fear and your worry or just like being uncomfortable for the short amount of time it takes to do a simple negotiation. Yay, recap, let's see. Okay, we're a little over. Oh, okay, sorry, I'm just looking at notes now. Okay, we'll get back all that in a second. I'll answer all the questions. I just saw someone said, hey, you're not answering, they wanted me to answer some questions. A quick recap, and then we can focus completely on negotiation, salary, and whatever you need. Okay, so again, 2008 versus 2003, a lot of similarities, you know, the jobs that are leaving, some of the jobs that are staying, but like I said, there's always opportunities if you can think through what that could be for you. Career management, put out there if you're a leader, what I need from people, what's going to happen, what's going to look like, communicate. If you're individual contributor, communicate. Your skills and your roadmap, you need to create them, be the leader that people need now. In terms of your brand and your skill set, remember, it's the focus on transferable skills. The job market industry may shift, but you have skills that can go along with that as well. Remember to pepper and give me the buzzwords so that I can find you. And so when you network and do this, and be creative in your networking, be out there, be seen as a leader and a content leader and an expert in your field. And salary and negotiations. Like we can stay in salary negotiations all day long. I have 100 million stories, and I will share anything I need with you need, but know your worth, which is researching, research, talk, share, be bold, think through what the job worth is, look online, ask. I swear to you, I am telling you, if you ask, you may get. Why? If I find that as a recruiter, you disappear, you said no, oh, sorry, you know, I took another job offer, thank you so much. And I find that there was only a $5,000 difference between me and that job. The amount of work to find a person is going to be 15 times the 5,000. So know your minimum, right? So have a minimum. Don't go under, don't set yourself back the way a lot of us have already. You know, we caught up, but stay where we are. Okay, that is my presentation. You got this, and I know Lindsay, a person I work with, she wants to make sure that if you guys want to continue an ongoing conversation with us, you know, you can drop me an email. Lindsay you can reach out to Lindsay, she'll get back to me as well. And we are also going and offering for anyone here today a discount for the services. CHCI alum 20, put that in and we'll take care of you. Okay, I'm going to now, I think, stop sharing, if I can figure out how to stop sharing. All right, stop video. Oh, start video. There's a stop sharing in here somewhere, 1 second. Okay. All right, Janet, up to you. And I think you're gonna manage some questions, Q&As.
Okay, great. Cindy, can you hear me?
Yeah, perfectly.
Perfect. Okay, we have a couple questions that came in.
Okay.
The first one, I am interviewing for a competitor. I expect them to give me a good pay raise. How do I leverage that hopeful offer with presenting it to my current boss for an increase? And how do I ensure that I don't burn bridges given the COVID crisis? Okay,
cool. First, congratulations. That's kind of amazing. And that's a really beautiful place to be. I'm going to say, it actually happens all the time, and that's totally fine. And what's really frustrating, you may find, I hope you don't, is how quickly people counter offer. You know, sometimes there people are hesitant to give promotions, and all of a sudden you have this offer. I'm like, oh yeah, we found an extra $20,000, and you actually can get a little upset by that. So don't, you know, it is what it is. But the way you can present it, you can say, hey, you know, set up a time to talk. Listen, I have some stuff that just came through. You know, I was just having, conversations, and I have an offer. I'm really surprised. I want to share it with you because I love my job and I love what I do and I don't want to leave, but it is a really nice offer. It's something I have to consider, given everything that's happening and and I have, we all have things to do and all, and it might be more responsibility. You can outline like, wow, they're giving me more responsibility, they give me more money. I don't want to leave, but can we have a conversation? What can we do so that I don't leave? I don't want to. I know it's a pain, and look at where we are on these projects, and I don't want to drop these projects, and I love the clients. What can we do? Make it a conversation. This is not an indictment on him or anything. People get offered money all the time. Competitors take people all the time. Give them an opportunity though to try and work with you, and then if you can't get to that middle ground, take the opportunity. Now you know where they stand, and now actually you have a framework. You have barriers. They can't give you more than they gave you, and now so you make a decision. One thing though, no, just because you're being offered more, sometimes a job could be 50K more, like so much more, and then you see how people live. You're like, wow, I don't want any of that. I never want that job. So definitely take it if it's better and good and has all the whistles. Make sure it gives you a better, there's a piece of it. Make sure you are getting a better life of what you want, what you're trying to do next in your career.
Next. Right. The next one is around career transitions. What would you suggest for someone who has jumped back and forth between two careers over the past 15 years, specifically around LinkedIn? How would you focus your skills and experience? I'd love to know the skill, but it is okay. It's fine. This is why LinkedIn actually helps people like you. You can have done this, in different jobs and in different industries, there were skills you did that mattered. Treat your LinkedIn as just a placeholder of telling people the skills you can do for a person, right? For the next thing. It is okay to highlight, take stuff out and put stuff in, and only highlight the pieces of those job description that match where you want to go. So basically start curtailing your job. Like, okay, yeah, I did all this, research analytics, but they really just want to focus on my sales piece. So try and think through a kind of like a steady story of where you've always kind of did sales. You kind of always, and just kind of weave that in, and maybe start to take stuff out that isn't going to be effective or necessary for the next job, right? So just, again, it's about me finding you with the skills that I need for the job, for the problem I have. If you're new to that field, if you're new to this field and you want to transition into a field that you haven't really had a lot of experience in, I actually advise a lot of people. I work with people in transition a lot. I tell people, like, okay, listen, do a project for a person, do a project for a company, do a project for an organization that highlights all the stuff you want to do next. Do it for free. Then take that, create a title of it, push everything down, put it up as who you are now. And I'm going to start focusing on only that. So if, that's a way to kind of bubble to the surface, where you want my eyes where you want me to look at. If you bounce around and you have a lot of, I did this, just try and refocus make the first thing you do right now. Do, a 3-month project where you did someone, and I just focused on research, biology research, or, I did data analytics to first the space, put that first, give me the buzzwords. And then if possible, try and weave that same story into the other descriptions and try and take out stuff that's going to distract me. Another question on opportunities in new growing fields. In this climate, is it worthwhile going back to school to get a graduate degree in a new field? Is a degree still a good investment when you're mid to senior level career stage?
I'm going to have bias here, right? I have a graduate degree. My husband doesn't. And I would say it 100% has never hindered him, because he's always done what he needed to do to get the next job. I think a graduate degree is $100,000 shift that if you feel, $200,000, it's a lot of money for a short-term moment. Graduate school is about going back to be a lead in something you love. It tends to be. If you're just looking for transition, I think there are ways, send me an email. There are ways you could do that without putting in a couple years and a lot of money. into something you don't know yet. Maybe there's smaller versions of that you can do. Could you do some work for someone 3 to 4 months on something? Make sure before you put that investment that it's really going to give you the next thing. I remember during 2008, how many people went straight into like law school and grad school because they were not finding jobs. It was fine. It was fine. You had to do, but it just delayed things a little bit because you still had to try and figure out, you still had to do the work to get to what you wanted. It's a tough one. I mean, I do feel like it's a personal decision. I don't think you should go to graduate school out of fear, I guess is what I'm saying. There are probably things you could do now to create success without having to do that.
We're going to take one more question since I know that we're a little up on time. The question is around recruiters and pre-screening. Most recruiters ask at the top of a pre-screening interview the salary you're targeting for the job. Is it better to have an option at the end once you pass the process? How do you answer those type of filtering questions?
Yeah, actually, that's really, really important. And I don't know if who of you have been following this, but there are a lot more restrictions on what companies can ask. I know in DC there's restrictions. I know New York and California, there's pay ban histories. No one's allowed to ask you anymore what you used to make. I would do a Google search on, where your state. But there's it's because pay history has created the pay gap, right? So because women get a job and they're just, they get a little more and get a little more and just incremental on their pay history. The pay bans have helped a lot because now you have to do your research and say, it is not about how much I paid. I need to know how much this job is worth, right? Forget what that job is over here. We're talking about your job and your problem and what I'm going to bring, the expertise. So let's focus on that. So if you can avoid until they're like locked in on you and they're like, ooh, we like you and you're bringing certain skill set. And one nice way of delaying that is saying, listen, let me better understand what the job entails. Like, am I traveling 60, 70 hours? Am I on, I need to better understand the details and ins and outs of my responsibility before I can kind of go into salaries. I don't know what you're about to offer. I don't know what the job entails. So this salary is about the job and it's not about me in that way.
There's actually one more question because It keeps coming up in different ways. We'll make this the last question.
Oh, but Jen, one thing also, if you want to, if people can send you or I a list, send us I'll answer these if it's quick ones. If I need 2 hours of my work, well, so let's don't feel like I'm not going anywhere. I mean, I'm working all the time. So, feel free to, we'll figure out a way for you guys to contact me. So last question.
Okay, great. Last question. And yes, we will, for everybody who's on the line, we are collecting these questions. We'll get them to Cynthia and we'll be sharing a recap next week by email. But the last question, because it's come up a couple of times, is what to do when you ask for a raise or you're asking for different things from your employer and they do give you the no. How do you restart that conversation? How do you revisit with perhaps asking for a review in 6 months? What's the best way to attack that process? So
I think, people are very fearful of getting a no. And I think I'm going to conjecture part of a lot of a lack of want and desire to do negotiations is a fear of a no. And it's almost like it's a personal rejection, right? You're like, oh my God, they don't value me. Like, it's about me. But, people, companies and individuals and organizations have budgets. You may not always be able, it's not like they don't love you or they don't value you. Sometimes they really truly can't. Not always, I'm just saying sometimes. So if you're like, hey, and actually there's a whole other conversation we can have, but you should never be surprised about the no, right? We talk about a lot in career mapping when we talk in a wager, a January, if you want to raise in December, in January, you're like, hey boss, I'm thinking I want to do, I want to kind of do more client facing role. I want to move toward that, this raise. Can you help me set up a program? Hey, how am I doing? It looks like I'm doing well. What do you think? Because, December, this is the expectation. And come October, November, listen, this is great. So you've been mapping. You should never be surprised by December, like, oh my God, they said no, right? That's ideal. But if you were to say no, and one thing you can say is, well, I understand there's a budgetary issues. I understand maybe this is not the time. Maybe everyone things happen in March and it's, we're here in February. It's for whatever reason, I hear you. Tell me what you need me to do. Like, what do you need to see? What's missing from me? If it's not a budgetary thing, maybe you think like, I don't have the skills yet for that level. Help me, tell me. And I want to map this out every few months. I want to do what you need to see done. And I want to reevaluate this in 6 months. And if I have done the things you need to see from me, I would love to have this conversation, right? You do that. If at that time they still say no, because this happens a lot. And, I've had a few women clients where they just keep it like, yeah, of course I will. Of course I will. Yeah, of course I will. And it doesn't happen. That is on you now. The first time you try, they said no. The second time you're like, hey, 6 months, they said, a year from now, if you are in the same exact location and you don't see, and you have to get wrapped around your head, they're not going to budge and not going to change. You just got a fantastic data point. You now know where you stand. There is total transparency of what your value, where you are, and your inability or ability to move. Now you better start looking for a job, because now it's on you. It's like one on me, shame on me, shame on you. Now by the third time, it's shame on you. It is time for you to move on. And if you are not satisfied and you want something else, start your map and, career map, and what are you going to do next, and how are you going to get out of there, and how are you going to network, and how are you going to do the things to become the expert so that I see you. Yeah.
Thank you, Cindy. I think this is a good time to wrap up.
Cool. That's wonderful. This is so fun. Thank you, Janet, and thank you, Claudia, for all the work you do. And I appreciate our sponsors, right? State Farm. And I really appreciate being here and being able to give back to the community that gave me so much, right? So everyone have a great day.